Hey folks, welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Mason. Today's episode is a part 2 of a part 1 that started last Monday with Josh Murphy. And you might be thinking, all right, losing 200 pounds to hike the Pacific Crest Trail. I kind of know this story. But I would say that you don't. It is so much more than you think it's going to be. Josh is an amazing storyteller. He lives up to his trail name, Long Story, because it is a long story. So long we broke it into 2 parts, but it is an incredible story of overcoming, of perseverance, of dreams falling apart right in front of your eyes and keep going. That is just the ability to just keep moving forward is amazing in Josh. And I was really moved by this interview, and very rarely do we break things into 2-parters, but this was worth it. And so if you're interested in listening to part 1, start last week and then listen to this one. And if you're interested in having your story highlighted, we do have a listener spotlight form. If you don't want to be interviewed, you just, maybe share some pictures, tell us a little bit about an adventure you recently did. Fill out that form. It's on our website, adventuresportspodcast.com. It's also in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea for a guest, please reach out. Fill out that form. There's a guest submission form. It could be you, could be someone you know. That does help. Actually, Josh came from, the guest we're talking today, Josh Murphy, came from someone suggesting we interview him. And I reached out. He said yes. That's how we got here. That's how we get a lot of our guests. So it does help if you, just have contact information or know where to reach out. And if it's a big name of someone you follow, a big athlete, or a big adventure, that's totally fine too. There's been plenty of folks that were very big names. I reached out and they were like, yeah, let's do it. That's how we get guests. I'm trying to think what else. I think that's all the details I have. Let's go ahead and dive into Josh's story. Now this book, Pursuit of Endurance, harnessing the record-breaking power of strength and resilience. You got the idea. Was there anything else you picked up from the book as far as just like mindset, or sounds like the PCT wasn't the only thing in there? There were other things.
No, there was much more in there. And a lot of the book resonated with me, especially the bits about like mindset and, just it introduced me to the concept of, ultra running essentially.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it appealed to me. And yeah, I need to go back and reread it because I haven't read it in going on 3 years now, however long it's been. But yeah, a lot stuck out to me with that book.
You read this, COVID's happening, you end up going back home. What was the time frame then and how difficult was it? I mean, you're basically having to reinvent yourself again.
Yeah.
Because you had this whole, you didn't have it planned out, but you had this direction you wanted to go, and then it was a dead end. Now you had to go find another direction. You got this idea about the PCT, but there's more than just the idea and pursuing it. I mean, you got to start shifting everything to that, setting expectations there, training for that, gear that's involved. What went into that for you, and how did you go about making that switch?
Oh, man. So I initially thought I was just going to hike a section of the trail from around Lassen Volcanic National Park to Crater Lake. That was my initial, this is what I want to do. These are two really cool places I've never seen before. And I don't even know what that is mileage-wise, but keep in mind, I've never done any sort of long-distance backpacking like that, right? But that was my initial prospect with the Pacific Crest Trail. And eventually, I remember the day vividly when I decided that I was going to attempt a through hike. Well, I was cleaning my bathroom actually in the midst of the pandemic, all of that craziness going on. I just had this scene from a movie style moment of clarity where I realized what my newfound purpose was, what my new mission was. And that was to hike the entire Pacific Crest Trail and document the whole thing, blow the dust off the camera, try to kind of recapture a dream I had long forgotten about and given up on, which is just kind of be a documentary storytelling photographer, or, try to capture some degree of that. And I had gone from not wanting to tell my story or put myself out there. And in fact, I even deleted all my social media before I left for the Army. I was ready to become a ghost, but I realized it would be more beneficial to tell my story than to not. Doing something like hiking the Pacific Crest Trail would really kind of help cement this person really did change. This person really did overcome what he thought he never would. I determined I was going to hike the PCT that day, the entire thing. First thing I do is go to YouTube, type in Pacific Crest Trail through hike. I don't even think I knew what through hike meant at that point in time. But yeah, it was pretty much a crash course in how do you do that? Where do you even begin?
A lot of great resources on YouTube, though.
There really are, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, like this day and age, you can figure out what you need to figure out pretty quickly.
Heck, you can probably see the whole trail.
Yeah, and that's actually something I made sure to not do. I didn't want to have the trail ruined for me, so to say. I wanted it to be as fresh as possible for me during the hike, and I did a pretty good job of that. Yeah, I would say 99% of the trail was like a completely unknown experience and adventure. So,
any doubters at this point?
Oh, myself, man.
Constantly yourself.
I was in a really, really rough place mentally after the rejection from the Army there. In a lot of ways, it didn't set me back entirely. I didn't 180 my progress, but man, to go through all that, to get that far, and to think I don't want to say made it, because I still had a very long way to go, but like to think I was, part of something now, and that I had made it to this next chapter, only to be thrown back. It really, it just kind of brought me back to how I felt all those years ago of, wow, you really are never going to amount to anything. You really are never going to make it out of this place. It doesn't matter, apparently. Apparently, like, no matter how hard you work or how much you do everything by the book or do what you're supposed to do, I guess it just doesn't work out for some people. This is where my mind was at this point in time. And it got really rough. It really did. Going back to those thoughts of suicidal ideation that had been persistent throughout a large chunk of my life, those came back in a pretty big way, man. It was extremely hard to be optimistic at that point in time. Even with, setting this goal of the Pacific Crest Trail, I felt like I lost my goddamn mind. Honestly, I'm thinking there was a very real part of me that obviously wanted to go do the trail, but there was also a very real part of me that thought, you're crazy, man. This isn't going to work. Nothing you've ever done has worked, or tried to do, I should say, has worked out. So how is this going to be any different?
Jeez. You're fighting against all that. I mean, maybe this felt like a desperate, empty attempt to do something else that
100%,
would also
man.
Eventually not work out.
Yeah. And what was appealing about the Pacific Crest Trail in that regard is, it really is kind of all on me. So it seemed like, the only thing that would allow me to fail would be myself, if that makes sense. Obviously you can get injured, you can run out of money. Multiple things can take you out of a hike. But, if you do your due diligence, prepare physically, do what you need to do, ideally the only thing that's going to stop you is yourself. And that was the mindset I tried to lean into more and more, and, overcome the negativity and just really view it as an opportunity to, again, prove myself wrong now. I don't think anyone was, oh my God, man, I'm the last person to really give myself credit in a lot of ways. Like, I get this all the time, even now. Like, despite losing 200 pounds, and coming as far as I had in, my life, I I really still felt like I hadn't accomplished anything, which sounds insane probably. But to me, losing the weight was just a means to get me to what my true objective was.
So you've still felt like you fell short because losing the weight wasn't the end goal. It was, like you said, a means to an end. Wow, that makes a lot of sense. But what I love what you mentioned about the PCT is it is all on you. You could, no one's there telling you, oh, your leg's swollen, you can't join, you can't hike today. You could keep going. No one was there. There wasn't some sort of system in place other than maybe permits or something that would prevent you from going and getting up every day and fighting through it. What got you to that starting line? How was that? How was that process? Was it more challenging than expected, smoother than expected? Because it sounds like there was still some pretty dark times you were battling through. Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible. This episode is brought to us by Oris Watches. You know, a piece of equipment on any adventure that I'm honestly surprised by how much I use is my watch. And I'm wearing a watch right now. I always have a watch on. And I believe that you should check out Oris Watches. Oris is a 119-year-old family-owned independent watch brand based out of Holstein, Switzerland. The brand has been certified climate and carbon neutral since 2021, and every year releases a sustainability report. Oris only makes mechanical watches like the new Pro Pilot X Caliber 400 and the new Pro Pilot Altimeter featuring a 3D printed carbon case. If you're a fan of mechanical watches like I am, there's nothing in the game that's better than Oris, and you can discover the full Oris collection at a retailer near you or at oris.ch. So if you want that one piece of equipment in your life to be functional, to be useful, to be beautiful, artistic, check out Oris Watches. Oris, go your own way. If your dad is anything like mine, he is notoriously difficult to buy gifts for. And your father or father figures in your life might be the same. If you're struggling with what to gift your dad for Father's Day, give him the gift of a fun, powerful, and easy way to get outside and explore with his own electric e-bike. I have electric e-bike. It's the cargo version. It is awesome. I can honestly run to the store, get groceries, go get some parts, or, any house project, which I do a lot of. There's always that one little piece that I'm missing. And instead of getting in the truck, driving to the town, there's a small parking lot. It's hard to get in and out of. I can just zip over there in my e-bike. And it's also a heck of a lot more fun. And every trip is almost like this little adventure. Electric e-bikes offer a wide range of customizable and adjustable options as well. So if you know what your dad's into, whether it be cargo or taking kids or grandkids for a ride, all that's a possibility with what you can add to the bike. Or even, an extra battery for a longer range. There's all sorts of stuff. So this year, skip the played out Father's Day gift. He doesn't need another mug or another tie or another, paperweight. Give the gift of adventure with electric e-bikes. Visit electricebikes.com. LECTRICE bikes.com. That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode.
I guess I kind of announced in June of 2021 that I was going to hike the trail. Well, I guess let's back up a little bit. 2020 is when I decided I was going to do a through hike. And I had toyed with the idea of, I was going to do it in 2021. But then I got to thinking, well, especially in the throngs of COVID and all the drama that was going on with hikes being canceled and trail towns being closed in 2020 and COVID still kind of lingering. I was like, I'm going to give this a year to see what happens with that. And plus, even if it is open fully in 2021, it's probably going to be, jam-packed. It's going to be chaotic, probably harder to get a permit. So I settled on 2022. Which gave myself, I guess I had about 2 years to prepare, but I wasn't really fully in the game until I announced publicly in 2021 of June of 2021 that, hey, I'm doing this next year. This is what I'm about. Follow along. You know, you are capable of more than you ever thought possible. That I released like a movie trailer style, like announcement thing. It was interesting. It was fun. Yeah. So once that was out there, I was like, okay,
you gotta do it now.
Yeah,
you told everybody.
Do it now. Yeah, it was, and I still think I'm nuts. Well, I should I have this video made, this announcement, and I'm like, just looking at it, watching it over and over and tweaking things. And I'm like about to upload it and I'm about to share it on YouTube and put it out there. And in that moment, man, I still think I'm nuts that I'm like looking for something that's like not really ever this is not going to scratch the itch that I have. And, this is just me being insane. And I've finally lost it. And I put it out there. And within 24 hours, like the response I got from that of people that are they're just like, oh my God, like, that's incredible that you're even like considering doing that. Like, and your story all wrapped up into this, and it completely 180'd me, man. It was like, oh no, this is about way more than me. This is really about, just showing other people what's possible. It's helping people find inspiration to get out of their own rut. And I know it really just brought on this greater sense of purpose, like well beyond just me. It's like I owe it to people now to go and do this.
So that was a year though, almost a year before you went.
Yeah. And then, from there on, it was just, keep training, keep saving money. Yeah, I just worked my ass off, pretty much doing photography and videography, I guess full time. It was paying the bills, at that point in time. I had a pretty good run.
Who were you doing it for? Brands or businesses, local?
Yeah, it was all pretty much local, like weddings, random small business stuff here and there, family portraits, just headshots, that kind of stuff. Getting an odd job here and there. And I eventually, in the about 5 or so months leading up to the hike, I just got like a second job at this local hospital as a janitor, actually, just because they needed people and they were paying crazy overtime for like the COVID situation that was going on there. So I was like, well, there's extra money for the trail. So I pretty much worked my life away in like the final few months leading up to the trail. And I also went through a breakup in that time. So that was kind of hard. So I guess I kind of worked to numb that and just keep myself focused on what the mission at hand was. But like, we're still friends. Don't get me wrong. There was really no negative. It was just kind of where I was at that point. I needed to go into this experience, I think, alone. Mm-hmm. And that was nothing against my ex. It was just, with the PCT coming up and where I was in life. And I had a lot of existential questions. I needed to really kind of take this opportunity to figure out who I was and what I wanted out of life. Because, which sounds extremely cliche, right? But once the Army was gone as my goal, it really just kind of allowed me to take a step back and realize, oh, wow, I don't know. I'm not distracted by that anymore. I just have the reality that is in front of me, and I have no idea who I am because I'm a completely different person than I was a few years ago, and I never really had time to sit down and process that. And now I'm about to go walk across the country for 6 months, and I don't even really know who I am. So I've got a lot to figure out.
And the PCT is legendary. It's vast. It's beautiful. If I ever do a thru hike, which I've never done one, it would be that one. It just seems like the best of all of it, the best of everything. Take us through starting that emotional roller coaster, getting there, the stress. And I always feel like I get a little sick before an adventure, just the nervousness, pressure to get everything done ahead of time and to be ready. And then I really don't start feeling better till the trip is started and I'm out there and I'm actually doing it. What was all that like for you?
So there I was at the southern terminus. Yeah, so my aunt, who lives kind of nearby, her and her husband, they dropped me off. And I just kind of watched their car drive away and looked back over at the terminus and thought, wow, this is it. And I am way more nervous now in this moment than I ever was at any point before that. It was strange. There was nothing like just building up that moment in your mind for so long. And I didn't even know what it looked like near the southern terminus. I just knew what the southern terminus looked like. And there I was, man. And I was so nervous, yet excited at the prospect of just how much unknown adventure was ahead of me. And I really didn't know what to expect, but I was ready, if not nervous.
Jeez, I mean, it feels like your adventure was before the PCT. Honestly, like the real huge chunk of it, the PCT was really a celebration of everything that went into it beforehand. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It wasn't like you proving to yourself you could do something hard. It was almost like a celebration of the fact that you already knew that you could. And you're going to do this really cool thing because you can now prove to yourself you can do hard things. Take us through the experience. I mean, was it just what you imagined it would be? Was it, there's elements of it that are similar to the military, just the kind of the daily routine, the camping out, some of the gear, dealing with gear. What were those first few weeks like for you?
So those first few weeks were honestly a pretty big wake-up call in a lot of ways. And I went into this hike thinking that I was going to be knocking out 15-mile days from the jump. That was not the case, honestly. I'm almost a little ashamed to admit it, but I went in way cockier than I thought. I didn't realize how arrogant I was about my perception of how I was going to be on the hike until those first few weeks. The desert demands respect. I'll put it to you that way. I had never set foot in a desert before. I ran out of water day 2.
So things are off to a great start.
Yeah. So, day 1, I hiked about 5 miles in and made camp in the first little clearing area you find. And I thought, all right, that puts me at about 15 miles to Lake Morena tomorrow. Easy, I thought. Yeah, didn't read far out properly. I just saw that there were, water spots along the way, but I didn't read the comments to see that they were all dry and had been for years. So started out on that day with way less water than I should have had. Probably ended up having 4 to 5 liters in total that day, but it was 90 degrees, no shade. I'm covered in salt. At one point I'm sitting there thinking, man, should I hit this button? I don't want to hit this button. I might have to hit this button on my, my Garmin device. And one of the main things that kept me going was I didn't want to be ridiculed in social media, Facebook groups the world over as the dumbass PCT hiker that didn't take enough water in the desert. But yeah, that was just a series of wake-up calls and
the
humbling
button to get
experiences.
rescued, you're saying?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, when I say the button, I meant the SOS button on my Garmin.
Yeah. I was making sure because, that's, you were there. You were already there mentally.
Yeah.
I mean, if things can go wrong really early where you do need help, I mean, it's not, a tragedy in the mountains doesn't have to be miles from anyone or weeks into it. It could be, I mean, people die on day hikes all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's totally legitimate, but I do see what you mean about the optics of built this trailer, built up a year of hype, all this work, and that would have been a tragic end.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm thinking, man, wow. It was when I started to climb out of Hauser Creek and I had a liter of water for the last stretch that I was like, oh my God, this is pretty bad. Could be worse. My mouth's bone dry. I'm covered in salt. And yeah, the desert was full of just eye-opening experiences like that. That was the first and last time. That was enough of a wake-up call that I chilled out, took things way more serious, and realized this is not the casual stroll out in the woods that it's kind of been led on that I had been led on to believe it was. Because there's a lot of sentiment that the PCT is the easy trail, etc. Which, I mean, I guess it's a little smoother to walk on than a lot of trails out east. But yeah, make no
Which
mistake.
is where you're from, you know.
Yeah, it's graded for livestock. That's what people use as a metric that it's quote unquote easy. Yeah, no, it's definitely not all smooth graded livestock trails, and there's definitely a lot to learn out there.
Wow.
A lot of suffering to go around. But those first few weeks were amazing. All of that aside, it was much more, the desert was so much more than I ever expected it to be. You think of a desert and you think of a flat landscape with a tumbleweed and cactus, but no, you're in the high desert. You have literal mountains everywhere and just sprawling valleys and insane vistas at almost around every corner. Do not count the desert short. I made that mistake. I thought it was just going to be, I'm going to breeze through this until I get to the Sierra. Then the trail will be really beautiful. And well, while that, the Sierra is its own thing, the desert has so much to offer that, if you're from the East Coast like me, you just don't ever think about. And it's so much more rewarding when you do finally get to a water cache, you really do have to plan tactically, what's your day going to look like? You're literally planning your mileage around where you're going to camp versus where the water is, which is kind of a given, I guess, but it's so much more important in the desert, when there's not just a stream every 5 feet. I'm going to have to carry 20 extra pounds of water today because, there's not many water sources for the next 20 miles. Fun stuff like that.
Nature has a funny way of humbling us. You were making fun of Florida earlier, which is I do too. I live there, and I tell people, but I moved here from Colorado. And have done so much hiking and backpacking and whatnot. And I tell people I was more comfortable going into the backcountry of Colorado than I am of Florida. There's infrastructure, there's trail signs, there's guidebooks, there's all this support for that lifestyle. Here, I feel like every time I go out in the woods, it's I dare you to come out here. Even though it's flat, it's way less hospitable in the sense of cold weather and blizzards. I'm man, if something happens out there, I'm all by myself. There's probably a meth head somewhere around here, but it's it is, to me, more hardcore. And even though I'm not nearly as far from things. So yeah, it has a funny way of humbling you, and it's a beautiful thing. So you're learning all this. You're learning these lessons. When did you feel like you kind of got into a groove, if you ever did? Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible. That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode.
It was interesting because the trail changes so much, for me at least. This being my first through hike experience, I would get in a groove for a little bit and that would change after a while. So I really found my step in the desert around Green Valley, which is kind of a few days before Hikertown. I would say pretty much from Hikertown till the end of the desert section is when I really found my stride. I started out in boots, and I eventually switched to trail runners. And, once I got those trail runners, it went from, 15 miles was a good solid day's effort. 20 was, wow, that was something to behold, right? And once I got those trail runners, it was like, yeah, 20 miles is very doable. Let's go, And I remember I left Tehachapi, California with, oh man, about a week's worth of food. I was just going to send it. I was not going to stop. I was not going to get off trail. I was going to leave Tehachapi and I was going to make it to Kennedy Meadows. And that's what I did. And that was the fastest, consistent daily mileage pace I had the entire trail. I was this hiking machine at that point. I made it to Tehachapi like a day and a half or 2 days sooner than I expected to. I remember I was just like, yeah, I'm in the zone out here. This is awesome. I'm ready for the Sierra Nevada mountains. And then you start getting up in elevation and everything changes. And that consistent 20-mile plus a day pace drops to kind of back down to where it's like, oh man, 15 miles is work. And I had never been at elevation before like that consistently. So it was just an incredible experience. Plus I really wanted to just kind of stop and take it all in as well. So, that I always tried to balance, covering ground with just stopping to take it all in. It's really easy, especially in a through hike these days, to get caught up in this whole let's crush 30 miles today. Just keep going all day, every day, as fast as you can. Short of setting an and
I can't stand that.
Yeah, and I looking back now, it's like I can't believe I got caught up in that. But I did from time to time. And, largely, though, I was out there to just enjoy the experience. I had my camera gear with me. So that was like one of the main reasons I was out there was to document what I was experiencing. And that in and of itself kind of dictated my pace and my groove, if you will, of how I was traveling on trail. I would look at figuring out where I was going to be making camp and where the stars were going to be or where the sun was going to be setting specifically. What are the views like between here and there? Where do I want to be at golden hour? That kind of thing. So I guess that's a unique perspective to look at things through. I would stop and make camp at a random place that, just didn't seem like much, but I knew at the right time of day, the way the light's going to hit things in a certain way it's going to be very photo worthy. So yeah, that a lot of my pace and my step, if you will, was largely dictated on what kind of photos can I take? How does this suit me as a photographer? What's my goal with what I'm trying to capture here?
What a fun thing to do. I mean, I'm not just, blowing smoke up your skirt or whatever the saying is right now. Your photos are amazing. I'm
thank
genuinely you. You took these? This is crazy. These are amazing. And to be able to have that ability out there was, I'm sure, just so fun. I know there's a lot of criticism towards trying to capture too much versus just be in the moment. But there was a time in my life I really got into photography and took some pictures that I was very proud of. And it's so fun. It makes me feel more in the moment because I'm looking for those little elements that are going to capture this so beautifully. And then that's basically a timestamp that I don't have to remember in my brain, or my brain can remember, but it helps me not forget where I was, what I was doing. And once you see that image, it almost blossoms all these other memories that are attached to it that I would have easily forgotten. And you did such a great job capturing it. There's a picture I saw of Mount Rainier with the Milky Way behind it, and I'm just like, that's ridiculous.
Oh man, that was one of my favorite nights on trail. Honestly, I hauled ass to get up there. I got a lot of shots at sunset as well. And I'm like, I know I want to be here to get the knife's edge at sunrise. And I achieved pretty much all my goals there from a photographer standpoint. But yeah, like you mentioned there, being in the moment versus, just being out there to over document, if you will. I was very conscious of that. And every photo I take was with intention and purpose. There were plenty of times I thought, maybe I should stop here. There came a point where I really did have to balance living in the moment and not letting documenting for the sake of, I don't know, social media or whatever take over what I was actually out there for. I really had to kind of disconnect at certain points because I would stop and find myself thinking like, what am I doing this because I want to capture this moment in a way that I'm going to be able to look back on and like, there's a story attached to this, or am I trying to do some dumb shit on my phone that's going to potentially go viral on like a reel or a TikTok or something? Like, what's actually important here? It really forced me to work with an authenticity. And really, I grew so much as a photographer or a creative in general, really, on this entire experience, and you mentioned earlier, like your photos that you're proud of that you've taken that you can like view and just they take you right back to where you were. And I took about 20,000 photos on this endeavor. Some of that's from shooting time lapses. So, they're not all unique necessarily. And I still haven't even gone through all of them, but, I can just look at an image and I can remember what it felt like to breathe the air in that moment. I remember what I ate that day or what I was doing in that moment, how I felt, the dirt caked on your sweaty skin and just the reward now, months later, looking back at these images, some of which I forgot I even took, that I'm so glad I have and that I wish I took more. I remember like that image of Mount Rainier you were talking about it. I was racing the clock to get to that position at the right time. And, I remember I cramped up so bad, like I was kind of neglecting hydration, trying to move faster, not taking breaks like I should. And the final few miles up there, I think I moved at like the hardest pace at elevation I ever did. The entire trail was leading up to that point where I took that photo just at the end of that day. I truly felt like after the months I was on trail at that point that I had finally become like this hiking machine, right? I have no idea what my like weight was, but like, my God, man, I felt like a machine in that moment. Every step, making my way up there, I felt like a mountain goat.
That's awesome.
Like I couldn't be stopped, like my heart rate was just purring along. And then I started cramping up and I just had to stop. I'm like, oh,
humbled
no.
you a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm a belly go. Oh, my cramp.
Yeah.
No.
I'm like slowly reaching in to try and like pull a liquid IV out of my pack. And some other hiker just, walking by is like, hey, are you good, man? And I just like held up a liquid IV. I'm like, I will be. I will be soon.
Go on without me. I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'll make it.
And when I look at that photo now and I look back, I remember every step of that.
Wow. That's so cool. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, it's intentional capturing. Very intentional capturing. You can capture it in a way to exploit. It's all about the intention, I think. There's a lot to unpack there. But, geez. Well, I'm going to need to go in just a little bit, but I want to know a few more things. I know this wasn't the original plan. Original plan was the military, and I know this was a backup. This was kind of like not a compromise. A lot of people could say that, but how do you feel with the way the path has taken? You could have never foreseen this looking forward, But with your journey and with the weight loss and with your health and changing all that and turning that around, how do you feel about the path that it has become so far? And how do you feel about the path that's ahead?
I feel like, all things considered, I finally believe that I'm on the right path. I don't think everything happens for a reason. I believe life is largely wholly what you make of it. But I feel like my experiences in the last few years have allowed me to be in positions where I've made the right choices for myself in life. If I had never gotten medically discharged, I don't know if I ever would have found out about the Pacific Crest Trail, right?
Who knows?
That journey, the level of solitude and introspection that I was able to dive into and open up within myself. I learned more about myself than I probably ever would have any other way. And it allowed me to view the world through an entirely different lens than when I started. I feel like I can do objectively more good now on the path that I'm on, whether it's through, wildland firefighting. I eventually want to, in the off season coming up, I want to get my EMT. There are so many other ways to help people and to even serve to a degree. If I find a sense of purpose in selfless service, which is something I've longed for so long, there are a lot of options out there, and even my purpose now is to just do as much of that as possible, while simultaneously, just letting people know that your past does not define the rest of your life if you don't let it. It's never too late to start fighting your way out of a situation. And, things are not going to change overnight. Could take years, could never come to fruition, depending on how you handle the obstacles that come your way along the path you're on. That's going to dictate where you end up. Yeah, I'm on the right path now. I know that. I believe that. And my mission is to just show as many other people as possible that they too can find their path and make some change for the better, man. Once we help ourselves, we'll want to help other people. I firmly believe that. And that's kind of where I'm at right now in life and where I intend to be for the rest of it.
Very well said. If you could point people somewhere, would you want them to follow you on Instagram?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to follow me on Instagram at ILL_walk-the-earth, I'll walk the earth. That's pretty much, I'm honestly trying to abstain from a lot of social media, but I'll post on Instagram pretty much primarily. So if you want to follow along, I'll post stuff on there. You can go to my website, joshmurphyimaging.com/I'll walk the earth. I post, blogs there, updates with the books I've got in the works. I'm making a coffee table book with, like I said, I have 20,000 photos. Might as well put some of those in print. And I tell you what, some of them are the only good way to view them is in a big, beautiful print. So, stay tuned for that. I'm writing a memoir of sorts about, just my life, the things that led to where I'm at now, my life before, during, and here shortly after the PCT and, lessons learned. So yeah, come follow along.
Sweet. Well, Josh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, truly.
Yeah. We'll talk soon, man.
Take care.
First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to this show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to grow in the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.